Well, when we built the addition to the Gettysburg Church, as some of you know, we built a handicapped ramp. And it's a fairly long ramp. It has to be because of the height of the sanctuary from ground level. And it works really well. It works so well that sometimes we wonder how we got along without it for so long. But the thing is, we did not realize that when we built that ramp, what we were really building was a children's play area. Because the little kids just absolutely love that ramp. They love to run up and down that ramp. Every time there's any kind of gathering in the fellowship hall, there will be the kids out in the hallway running up and down the ramp. They just don't ever seem to get tired of it. Because that's the thing when you're a little kid. You get enjoyment and even a sense of wonder out of even the simplest things. The things that we adults take for granted. Ever seen a little kid, maybe a year and a half or 2 years old, ever seen a kid about that age running? And they just love it. They get such a kick out of that, just being able to run. They think it's so cool that you can move your legs in a certain way and you get someplace. You know, they just think that's amazing. And the next time we get a fair amount of snow, go watch the little kids playing in it. Little kids think snow is awesome. When you're a little kid, you don't complain about the snow the way adults do. You revel in it. You love it. You think God created snow just so you could play in it. You know, we've been talking about how Jesus said that if we want to enter the kingdom of heaven, we need to become like little children. And we've been looking at what qualities little children have that we need to recapture as adults. I think this is one of them. We need to recapture our sense of wonder, our sense of amazement, of complete enjoyment of the world that God created. How do we lose that in the first place, do you suppose? Well, maybe we just get more responsible. We have more to do. Feels like we spend most of our time running around, so it's not as amazing as it used to be. We realize that, hey, you know, somebody could get hurt running up and down that ramp, and so we stop doing it. We tell others to stop doing it. We have to shovel the snow now. We have to drive someplace in it, and so all of a sudden that snow is not so much fun anymore. But it's not just that we stop being amazed at the world, it's also that we start actively complaining about it. And I do it too, don't get me wrong. It's too cold. It's too hot. It's too wet. It's too dry. We complain about our jobs. We have too much work to do. We don't get enough time off. We don't get paid enough. Everything costs too much. Complain about the government. No matter who happens to be in charge of the government at any particular time. And of course, we complain about each other too. That person was not nice to me. This person did not do what they were supposed to do. That other person does not know what in the world they're doing. We complain about ourselves sometimes too, you know. I'm too fat. I'm too old. I'm not smart enough. I'm not good enough. You know, there's really nothing in the world that we cannot complain about if we really put our minds to it. And it was the same in Jesus' time too, you know. Jesus had to put up with complaints all the time. Pharisees complained because he was performing miracles on the Sabbath day. The disciples were complaining because they were not getting all the power and prestige they thought they should get. Martha complained to him because he was letting her sister Mary get away without doing any work. You know, think about how Jesus must have felt. And here he was, the divine Son of God. He's having to put up with all of these little petty complaints day after day after day from anybody and everybody. So the question is, how do we stop this? How do we get out of that mode of complaining about stuff and get back to the sense of wonder and amazement at the world that we had when we were little kids? Well, I think the first thing to do is just realize that we're doing it. You know, this mode of complaining can become so instinctive to us that we just start doing it automatically. Complaining becomes our default response to every situation. We don't even realize we're doing it. And believe me, pastors are every bit as guilty of this as everybody else. You get a bunch of pastors together, you never heard so many complaints. You ever heard the old joke, what do you call a group of pastors in the basement? A wine cellar. That's the first thing we have to do, is to just be aware of how strong our instinct to complain really is. But it's not enough to just stop complaining. We need to replace our complaints with something. What we really need to replace them with is gratitude. Gratitude to God for all that God has done for us. Now that's a really churchy thing for me to say, right? I mean, how many times have you heard in church that we're supposed to be grateful to God? I mean, it's still true, don't get me wrong. But it's also kind of a cliche, you know? The fact is that there are a lot of times that we don't feel particularly grateful to God. We may know that we should, but we don't. You know, pretty much everybody here has gone through some pretty tough stuff in your life. And some of you are going through it right now. And if that's you, you're probably not too interested in hearing about how grateful you ought to be right at the moment. But if you do have a current hurt, just try to put it aside, just for the moment. I'm not saying pretend it didn't happen or ignore it or anything like that. It's real. It needs to be dealt with. I'm just asking you for the moment. You know, you have a right to feel what you feel. I'm not trying to take it away. But just for a minute, try to put it aside. Think about if you have anything in your life that you could think of to be grateful for. If there's ever anything that happened to you that was good and that you did not do anything to deserve it. If there's anything that you ever received as a gift, maybe love from a family member or from a friend, maybe a kind word when you needed one, maybe a helping hand, maybe somebody who came into your life just at the time that you needed them to. Maybe they didn't even stay in your life, but at that moment you needed them and they were there. You know, there can be all kinds of examples. Count your blessings is another cliche, but the fact is that if we can look at our lives clearly and truly count our blessings, most of us have received an awful lot of them. Most of us do have a lot of things to be thankful for, even if our current situation is not really too good. But while gratitude is a good thing and we need to cultivate it, even that does not get us really where we want to go, does it? It's a start. That's all it is. Because we're not trying to just stop complaining. That's part of it. But what we're really aiming for is to recapture that sense of wonder that we had when we were little kids. So how do we do that? Well, the Bible tells us how. The way to recapture that sense of wonder is to focus on God and on God's creation. Look at the first two verses of our psalm that we read today, Psalm 19. The heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hands. Day after day they pour forth speech. Night after night they reveal knowledge. The sky itself gives us something to marvel at. You know, I don't know if we all realize how lucky we are to be living in this part of the world. I went for years not being able to enjoy the sunset. First I lived in Wessington Springs, which is a wonderful town, but it has these hills just west of town. And so you really don't get to see the sunset. The sun just drops behind the hills. Then I lived in the Sioux City area, and the lights of the city kept us from really enjoying the sunset the way we'd like. But here, I am convinced we have some of the most beautiful sunsets in the whole world. And I hope you don't take them for granted, because those sunsets are shouting the glory of God. That alone should spark a sense of wonder in us. And the stars. Do you ever go out on a clear night and just look at the stars? I don't do it nearly as often as I should, but there are so many stars in the sky here. I mean, there are everywhere, but you get away from the town lights, the stars are just so bright and so clear. As our reading from Isaiah says, God brings out the starry host one by one and calls forth each of them by name. Because of his great power and mighty strength, not one of them is missing. Again, those stars are shouting the glory of God. Those stars should spark that sense of wonder in us. There are all kinds of things that can do that if we just take the time to look at them. There's beauty in the snow. There's beauty in the rain. There's beauty in the sunshine. There's beauty in all the animals and the birds and the fish and everything else that we have around here. There's beauty in the people around us too, if we'll only stop and look for it. Really, everything that God created is a miracle. And every person that God created is a miracle. If we look for that, if we really look for it, we can see it. We can see it in every person that we meet. We can see it in ourselves too, if we really look for it. Little kids see wonder everywhere. So should we. And you know, when you think about it, it really is kind of amazing that we can move our legs a certain way and get someplace, don't you think? If we want to enter the kingdom of heaven, we need to see the world the way little kids see it. So let's stop complaining. Let's be grateful. And let's look at all the beauty of nature and be amazed by it. Let's look for the beauty in other people and be amazed at that too. Let's look for the beauty in ourselves and be amazed at that. And then let's be in awe and wonder of the incredible, awesome God who created it all. Amen.